welcome to episode 7 of the Select Characters podcast. My name is Chris and I'll be your host for the coming episode, and I'm joined as always by my two fellow gamers, Sam and Enrique. Hi guys.
How's it going?
What's up?
Hi. What a week it's been, right? Fallout 4 got announced, we got refunds on Steam now, but before I get ahead of myself, Fallout 4, you guys seen the trailer?
Yep. Yeah, all 780 times I played on Twitch.
What were your impressions?
I was excited because I genuinely enjoy the Fallout lore. Since playing it back on PC, Fallout 1 and 2, Tactics. I even bought the really shitty action RPG like Brotherhood of Steel that came out.
Right.
They're fun stuff. I love that whole like post-apocalyptic 1920s style like blend. Mm-hmm. And for what it's worth, I do like Bethesda's game, as buggy as they are. They're still really fun. Just place fun world to explore. So I'm actually pretty excited, and it looks a lot more vibrant than the last title. So that's that going for it.
Yeah, two things I noticed about the trailer. One, it's not as much as a wasteland as Fallout 3 was, which is definitely more attractive to me. And the other one was the stiff animations and characters with a 1,000-yard stare, which is telling, I think. I'm not saying that the game looks shit, because there seems to be a lot of controversy surrounding the graphics. Like, I don't care if it's not state-of-the-art. I'm just saying that it seems to suffer from Bethesda syndrome, which is weird character animations, and it seems to be in the same engine as Skyrim was, and that is a terrible engine.
Yeah, I feel like I'd almost let them off the hook for that kind of stuff, but then you see games with just as many NPCs that have been made way better in the last few years.
Yeah.
But it's just going to be another one of those games with like a really awesome world and tone, and then just crap everything else.
Yeah.
I found a lot of people making comparisons between The Witcher 3 and I guess Fallout 4, just Bethesda in general, and Skyrim.
Well, it's hard not to.
Well, yes and no. I can understand, mainly because The Witcher 3 is an RPG that recently came out that hit so many high notes with a lot of players.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I think Skyrim and to a degree Fallout are different kind of experiences, because you notice they don't give you a lot of guidance in terms of how you proceed through the world. Witcher 3 is very narrative intensive, and all the quests, they have their own little story to follow. You're constantly being told where to go, what to do. With Skyrim, a lot of it is just they put you into this open world and you're kind of off to do your own thing. So with Fallout 4, I kind of get that you're going to have the same feeling again, where you're just going to get dropped in this world and you'll have that loose quest to look around, but the bulk of it is going to be just you walking around. So when it comes to all the resources they put into making the world feel as open as possible, I do feel that kind of not justifies it, but it kind of explains why things like the stiff character movement, that, not as much time spent on facial animations might occur, because they're not so concerned with telling the smooth narrative where so much as they are with just giving you a bigger playground to play in.
I've got a theory about why they're still using the same engine. They're using the Creator engine, right? Which was born out of the Gamebryo engine, which is an engine that they made in 2002, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is a case of executive meddling. There's not enough money, or there's not enough money to pay the people who are actually making the game, so they have to stick to that same old engine in order to cut costs. And that's why they're still running the same thing they've been running for the past decade.
You think they kind of maybe got backed into a corner because of all the hype surrounding Fallout 4, that at this point Bethesda just says, hey, the bubble's about to burst, we should probably release this sooner than later, and if that means you running it on an older engine, then so be it.
Could be. On the other hand, the hype for Fallout 4 was already so large that people were going to be disappointed regardless of how it looked.
That's probably true. What do you think? Paid mods, Fallout 4, yes or no?
I think so. I think they are going to make their return, because I sort of thought this up last week. I think the reason why it failed, like the test failed with Skyrim, is because they tried to implement it in what's essentially a pretty old game at this point. And I think that it's going to go over better if they just implement that with a new game in the series. I think that's an easier sell than what they did. I mean, if it's going to work for Unreal Tournament, it's got to work for a new Fallout game.
But the difference isn't the Unreal Tournament being released for free?
That's definitely true, yes.
I don't know, I think there's a difference between why it actually didn't work and the perception that Bethesda has. I think it didn't work because, honestly, people don't like the model. They didn't like Bethesda taking a 75% cut from someone else's work. They don't like the potential it has to be exploited, where you can have, modders stealing other people's work, or developers just suddenly becoming lazy because suddenly modders are going to pick up their slack. There's a lot of just gray area that people weren't happy with, but at the end of the day, the biggest thing was they weren't happy with the distribution of funds. When you look at it, yes, Skyrim is an older game, and a lot of these mods, there's an ungodly amount of content that players are putting out, and the whole concept of the mod community is that, they've been doing it for free because it's something really fun. They want to share that with others. You can pick up someone else's mod that they've been working on and add to it, and it's kind of this whole culture behind the modding that it's a community that everyone works together. And with Bethesda trying to implement that on Skyrim, since, yes, it was already established, but it didn't go over well. People don't want that to change. And it worries me because I don't think Bethesda understands that. They don't understand that the community doesn't like this paid mod system where they're taking a 75% cut for someone else's hard work. Regardless of whether it's their game and their tools, the fact is that the bulk of this work is made by somebody else. So Bethesda shouldn't be taking that much money out of it. But in their eyes, and verbatim, what they said was, we don't think it worked because Skyrim is just an established community, so people are resistant to it. So they're going to try it again. And, I am very worried that they might try to put it with Fallout 4 and what that could mean in terms of the content that we see and the content that we might get left out.
Yeah. Who knows at this point, but I don't think that they would be going through all that trouble if they're not going to try it again. At least I hope that if they implement it again, they do it in a manner that is both respectful to the content creators and the actual end user. Because the first time around was anything but good. All right, well, what do you guys think about talking about what we played this week? So, what have we been playing this week? Who wants to go first?
I've been playing The Witcher 3 again, but
no surprise.
I know. I tried to make an effort to play something else, so I got Chips Challenge 2, came out a couple weeks ago, and it's the sequel to the very old Windows game Chips Challenge, which is a kind of puzzle game, and you work your way through these levels and get the keys and all the chips so that you can make it to the exit. If you've played it, it's a total classic.
Never even heard of it.
Yeah, it's not going to stand out in 2015 as like a breakaway title, but it's mostly kind of a nostalgia trip. The guy who made the first one, the rights got locked up in a bunch of stuff for, 15 years? Mm-hmm. And he finally got everything back and released them out as a bundle pack on Steam. So I played a little bit of that and realized that it was much harder than I remember it being, but it's still a lot of fun if you like kind of fun little puzzle games.
Right. Okay. I am going to ask this, and I know I should not ask this, but I'm still going to do it. Where are you now in The Witcher?
I just got to Velen, but I ran through Velen and went straight to Novigrad, which is cool that they let you do that. Mm-hmm. Because the way I understand it is that that's actually the next piece after Velen. So I cleared out a few question marks, got most of the way through the Bloody Baron, and then realized that I could just run straight to Novigrad, so I went to play in that Gwent tournament, and I'm about halfway through that tournament.
Right.
And I gained a lot of respect for Gwent as a game inside a game, as far as something you play against the computer, because when you're playing against the better opponents, basically every card in both of your decks is going to come into play, except for a couple. Mm-hmm. And so for a game that you play against the computer, it works well for that, because you can't just reload and play them again and again, waiting for them to get a bad draw, like so that you could beat them, because most of the time all the cards come out. So it's well suited for a game that you play against the AI. But I'm still digging it, still think it's a great game. Yeah. Still having a good time.
It's a lot of fun. All right, Enrique Cancel.
Still spending some time with Witcher 3 and Gwent. I actually just started that, what is it, like the high stakes quest line where it's that giant poker, like the Gwent tournament.
Yeah. Yep.
But I did actively try to play something else, and I got to replay some Don't Starve again, because they just released the email saying that everyone who previously owned Don't Starve now has access to the multiplayer mod, the Don't Starve Together.
Yeah, I need to check that out pronto.
I haven't tried it yet. I'm actually going to be doing the multiplayer next week, if you guys ever want to jump in on it. But I haven't played the game in quite a while, so I jumped back in to see some of the new mechanics they added, and they definitely beefed the game up a lot more, which is a lot of fun.
So they added like content instead of just multiplayer?
Yeah. They've had previous content patches before. There's like Reign of Giants. They added a new character. They added some new mechanics in terms of you have like different seasons, like winter, spring, summer. They added a whole underground biome. They added like I guess almost like an underworld biome now, which is really interesting.
Wow.
New enemy types. There's, I guess, like during different seasons, you can have like these giants attack your base or wherever you're at. There's like a giant, weird elk, abominable snowman creature that can attack you. There's treants that will come out if you cut too many trees randomly. It's actually pretty neat.
Oh, sounds cool.
Wow.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate that this game is a success story for early access?
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because the last time I played it was about 3 or 4 months ago, and it was already feature rich back then. I would imagine that it's got even more features now, like you just said. So yeah, good on them for actually finishing it and adding a nice little cherry on top. Good on them.
There's been about 3 games that I've played on early access that have felt like complete titles, and Darkest Dungeon's been one of them. That's been the second one, and the third one, which I actually just started playing a little bit, was Ronin. Ronin is surprisingly fun, and there is a big amount of content considering it's just early access. I'd say the game's about 98% complete.
Right.
I don't know if you guys ever played Gunpoint.
Yes.
It has a very similar art style, and the movement is, again, very similar to it, but where it differs is when you get into combat, it turns into this kind of turn-based combat where you do your actions, the enemy does their actions, and you can queue up moves, and since your character's like a really badass ninja, you can kind of like make some really cool type of combinations, and you have to kind of foresee their attacks and where they're going to go, so it's pretty neat.
You still punch people? Because Gunpoint had the best punching in video games.
You have a sword,
Oh, man.
Boom.
so it's even better.
Anything else?
That about sums it up.
Well, I've also been busy with The Witcher 3. Let's Skellige now, which was fantastic. And I'm just sort of running around, finishing up loose threads. And
Clearing out those question marks.
yes, lots of them. Actually, I have a couple of failed quests, and there's no way to redo them, which is pissing me off, because now they're just... they're in my quest log as a testament to my failure.
Oh, no.
Yes, I did not like that. But other than that, I bought an iPad Air. So the first thing I did was install Hearthstone on there, and I've been playing Hearthstone pretty much non-stop. Whenever I was not playing The Witcher, I was playing Hearthstone. And Jesus Christ, you sort of forget how fun that game is until you go back to it and play it again. It's ridiculously fun.
Yeah, it's no Gwent.
It's no Gwent. That is definitely true. But it's still really, really cool. Oh, and I played a bit of Heroes of the Storm, which is released now.
Is it released or is it like open beta?
Open beta.
I think it's released now. The whole release event for that.
I remember seeing the YouTube video for that. That was some very impressive light show.
Yeah, that was...
For a free-to-play MOBA.
yeah. I think that was actually the launch of the game.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I do know it's pretty fun, and the interface is very slick.
Yes. And it's objective-based instead of, item-based, which is nice. I like that.
I just like that the game gives you a pretty robust PvE-style gameplay if you're not necessarily that good at the PvP aspect of it.
Yeah. And some heroes are specifically meant for PvE, which is quite cool. I mean, Jesus, what's her name? The dark elf undead lady.
Sylvanas?
Arthas.
Sylvanas Windrunner. That's
Arthas.
So, yeah, Sylvanas. She's pretty much a hero designed for pushing lanes and just fighting against the towers and the minions, which is quite cool. I like that. I also really like playing her. But yeah, I think that is all I've been playing this week. I'm just surprised that after 3 weeks' time, I'm still playing The Witcher 3. Because usually, if I buy a game and I really like it, I've got it finished between 2 days and a week.
Yeah, that game's it's a heavy hitter.
Oh yes.
I mean, it's hard to come away from. You sit down to play video games, and that one keeps popping up at the top.
Yeah. So I'm sorry if we sound like a broken record, but it is the game of 2015 up to this point, at least for us. So yeah, we'll just play that for a bit.
Yep, I agree.
All right, who wants to jump into the meat and bones of today's episode?
I do. Let's go.
Let's go.
So, do you guys still read game reviews for games that come out and everything?
Hardly.
Not in a long time.
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is because I've noticed a really interesting trend now where a lot of the time when people want, updates on games or they kind of want to see the previews that are coming out, I feel like they're relying less and less on the written review and going more after YouTubers and more visual representations of the game like Let's Plays and things like that. I'm kind of just wondering what your thoughts about it are.
I don't like Let's Plays personally because I want to play the games myself and not watch someone else play, but I can totally understand why people go for Let's Plays to influence their buying decisions, because Let's Plays are essentially coming in the place of demos. We don't really have demos anymore, so we can't demo a game before buying it. Now we watch someone else play the game and make our decisions based on that, which I think is quite good.
Yeah, especially for purchasing decisions, right? You could read about somebody describing a game for 3 pages, or you could watch it for 30 seconds and know exactly how it plays.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the thing, though. Like, a lot of these Let's Plays aren't 30 seconds, and I'm surprised that people don't have the attention span to read 3 pages worth of, description of a game, but they can sit through a 2-hour, Twitch stream of the game.
Well, that's a sign of the times, isn't it? I've got trouble with sitting down and reading a whole swat of text on the internet, but I do watch videos and films and series for hours on end because the visual medium is just a bit more stimulating to me. Like, something is continuously happening in front of my eyes and I can get involved in that in some way.
That's true, but it also strips away levels of mediation, because to read a review, they watch the game, they write about the game, and then you read it, and then your head creates an image of what the game actually is. But with video, you just sit down and look at the game. Basically cut out the middleman.
Yeah.
And unless it's somebody that you care about their opinion about the game, then you don't need to read the review. I think that's where they're still relevant, is because if you pick a tastemaker that you align with, you still want to know what they think about the game. But as far as them actually describing what they're doing and what you do when you play this game and how it works, you can get all that stuff faster and better from a video source.
Yeah, I'm aware that, the direction I'm coming from, I'm obviously biased because I write game reviews and critiques and stuff for a living, but I do find it interesting that, I guess, like, that distinction between where the written review ends and where the YouTube medium begins, because I think there's a separation where people on YouTube aren't necessarily, I wouldn't trust them as critics, but more as an entertainer. I don't necessarily watch them because I really care about, like, any in-depth description they can give me of the game. I watch them because they're entertaining. I like their personalities. And I feel like I don't get the same content I get from them I would from reading somebody else's actual written review on it. Well,
written reviews can be entertaining, and you can read those because you like the guy writing it. It's the same for YouTube things. We tend to listen to people we like more quickly than people we don't know or don't like.
I do agree with that to an extent in terms of the personality behind it, but I also feel like being on camera and then having that visual medium, it almost encourages people to kind of make a character of themselves. So you're not really looking at an authentic person and an authentic opinion. You're looking at, what they're trying to sell, like PewDiePie. PewDiePie is a great entertainer, but that's his personality. That's not how he really is in person. So sometimes when you watch his, I guess, Let's Plays or any commentary you make on games, it makes you wonder how much of this is the real person behind it and how much of that is him just living up to a character that he's established.
Well, he's definitely an entertainer. He's not a critic. Take for instance, someone like Super Bunny Hop or Total Biscuit. Those guys are critics for the most part.
You don't think they're entertainers as well, though?
Well, you can be both at the same time. You don't have to be and/or. You can be and.
I would even say that you could begin to draw a line between reviews and criticism at this point. Because a review would sort of inform a purchasing decision, and criticism does too. They're very similar in a lot of ways, but I would sort of think that some reviews contain components of both, and the actual reviewing the product part is maybe less necessary now, and the criticism part where you tell me what you think about this thing, that serves as both entertainment and information.
Yeah, see, but I feel like that distinction is easier to make in the written medium because you have, specific reviews labeled as such. You have editorials labeled as opinion editorials as such. So when you're reading these, you can tell what you're looking at. And again, with video, Total Biscuit makes some great points and he's a great commentator, but sometimes, he does have, his personal biases. He does have his own style and personality, and he interjects that with his video. So a lot of times, are you really listening to, I guess, the character of Total Biscuit, or are you listening to like a very thought out and like review or something?
Just because something is written does not mean that the writer is not taking on a persona. Everything that you can say for and against written reviews can sort of be applied to video as well.
That's true, and it also depends on why you're approaching it. Like, do you want to know about the game, or do you want to know what somebody thinks about the game?
Yeah. Well, reviews are always someone's opinion anyway. So you're reading those to find out what some guy is thinking of this game that you are interested in.
That's true.
So I don't really think there is much distinction to be made between the two things, other than they are different mediums, but they're both portraying, or they're both trying to do the exact same thing, which is inform the consumer.
I don't know. See, I guess with going along with your comment about why you're reading it, I've noticed a trend that even just going around on subreddits on our games and other more specific towards the game, when you look at reviews for a game, you don't. I guess the audience doesn't look at who's writing the review as much as they do where the review's coming from. You don't say so and so from Game of Sutra wrote this review. They look, hey, Game of Sutra gave this review a 9 out of 10, or GameSpot or IGN. You're looking at the sites putting out the review, so there's less attention on the individual writing it.
Yeah.
As opposed to YouTubers where you're going, oh man, I wonder what Angry Joe said about this, or I wonder what Total Biscuit. And again, in that scenario, you're looking for the personality. You're looking for the entertainer.
Right.
Are reviews theoretically supposed to be neutral?
Well, you can't really do that.
I know it's impossible, but I mean, like, are they? Because basically it's one person telling you what they thought about a game, but I mean, how much of themselves should they let creep in there? Like, in the perfect review, is it very sterile and just based on exactly what the game presents and not colored by the person's perception?
In an ideal world, you want to have as much, I guess, objectivity in a review, I would say. At least just when it comes to things like, like how does it perform well? How does the game look? Are there, really bad mechanics present in the game? But I don't think that reviews should be devoid of any kind of personal opinion, because I think that's what helps you make those connections to the reviewer, or even just the game in general. Because I know when I write reviews, one of the things I like to do is I like to compare the game with something else that I previously played that I enjoyed. I think that helps the audience get a better understanding of where I'm coming from.
Right.
But I don't know, I don't feel like it relies so much heavily on myself and my personality as an entertainer. I think it's more those connections are made just to help people to make those associations.
Do you think that written reviews are slowly dying?
I think they are to a degree. And I don't know if that's because of the advent of the YouTube scene and just video and how it's more well received. But I have been noticing a steady decline in reviews as opposed to more clickbait style articles.
Yeah.
And publications are shutting down too.
I feel like a lot of publications are kind of struggling and they don't know how to adapt, so they're kind of throwing balls into left field, seeing what catches someone's eye.
They have to move most of their stuff online because that is where content lives nowadays. And the thing that sells the best online is video. So most companies and most magazines, they jump to the chance to do video stuff because it's easier to retain the people interested in the stuff that you're talking about if it's in video form.
I mean, you guys don't think you lose, I guess, some of the content when you go from a written medium to a video medium, the same way you would lose content when you have a book in front of you and you see a film adaptation?
I don't think so. I think doing it in video form actually adds something to the experience because now you can directly see what somebody is talking about instead of just reading about something that they saw in the game. They can talk about something and you can instantly see on the screen what he's talking about. Plus, it becomes harder for developers to ship a shitty game because the first Let's Player that plays it, people will see it if the game doesn't perform well.
I prefer print, but I mean, for pure efficiency's sake, it's really hard to argue with video.
Oh, it's less time consuming.
Yeah, like I could just watch somebody doing the thing. Like everything I need to know about actually playing the game, this is what it feels like moving like this. This is what, not an opinion about swinging a sword, but actually watching the character swing the sword. All that stuff I can just grab from a video much faster.
Yeah.
And although I prefer to read print, there's still going to be a disconnect there where even the person who can write and describe it in the most accurate way possible, it's still not me actually putting my eyeballs on it.
What do you prefer about print then?
It just feels familiar, and for some reason, watching a video feels like a giant obligation. Like, have you ever clicked on a video link and then been bummed out about it for a second? I don't know how you put a term to that feeling, but it's different. I'm not sure exactly why. I like to read because I'm used to reading, I suppose.
Right.
It's what I'm more familiar and comfortable with. And if I want to know the thoughts inside the critic's head, like the thoughts of the person writing the article, print is where I'll always go, because then it is the more pure form of their expression. Because if it's video, there's something taking away from their actual opinionated expression, but in print, it's just that.
I don't necessarily agree. Just because it's in a video doesn't mean that the person making a video can't express every little thought that he has about this.
I do agree with Sam where I think that the written review is almost a more pure expression. And with video, it's entertaining, but I feel there's more pitfalls for the creator to fall into. They do rely on video and a lot of visual stimuli, which is great to showcase certain things. But I feel like in a way that can almost lead them to getting a little bit lazy in terms of providing like objective and in-depth opinions, where they can just sit back and rely on letting the video do what the video is doing, and they don't have to put as much effort into it. Whereas when you have the written medium, it's simplest form. It's just the words on the paper. So as a writer, I feel like you have to put in extra effort to express those feelings and to create that connection with your reader.
Yeah, but your first and foremost goal should be informing consumers. And you can do that better if you directly show them what you're talking about. Maybe you don't have to do as much work with a video. That's debatable, because making a video is a hell of a lot of work. But in the end, all you're there to do is inform consumers. And I think that video is the superior format for that. I'm not trying to say here that written reviews don't have a place, because I think they are important as well. I'm just saying that video is slightly better.
It lets you see direct examples of what they're talking about.
Right.
And hopefully now we're talking about the opinion level of it, not the meat and bones actual review of the base level of the game. We're talking about getting somebody's opinion on something. So the thing is that video and audio, to me, are more of a direct feed that requires less interpretation. So it's harder for me to get on the same page as somebody in a couple ways, whereas with print, like, you read it and then make that image in your head based on what you read. Mm-hmm. And it feels like, in a way, that might grab that intangible thing. Like, that process might bring you closer to understanding what they're talking about when it is not something that they can directly show you. That does not make sense, but it's true.
I mean, I do agree that video does give you a better way to show your audience what you're talking about. You can specifically show them gameplay footage. You can show them where the mistakes that you notice were. You can show them, hey, there's a lot of screen tearing. Look at here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost the same way where reviewers, they do put images in their articles, so you can kind of see, direct references to what they're talking about. So I do see that connection.
Yeah, but moving images is the most important thing about video games. So it would stand to reason that showing moving images to accompany your words would be better than just reading about stuff.
It is. I guess my argument stems less from the content itself and more towards the people making the content, where I feel, in a way, with the video, like the video sense, there's almost a bigger pressure to create a character and then to stick to that character. And that, in a way, can kind of influence your quote-unquote job of informing the consumer.
It doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be good, but certainly doesn't have to be bad. I mean, if a character helps you to convey the message better, so be it. I mean, if you're doing something publicly, you'll always put on a different mask. Like, you're showing the people the kind of person you want them to see when you're working on this stuff. So you can't really get out of using personas, whether you're writing or whether you're making a video.
I mean, ideally, if I was making a purchasing decision for a video game, I would just want to see somebody play it in a video form for 30 minutes with no
audio commentary.
None of them talking over it.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, let me watch 30 minutes of the game, and right after that, I know whether I want to buy that game or not. Yeah. And in a way, at that point, I almost don't need a tastemaker to tell me what they think about it, because I can be my own tastemaker in that situation.
Right. That I can definitely agree with.
It doesn't matter, whether they like it or not. I have all the information I need to make my own decision from that. But you don't really see that happening, and that's interesting, because I think they want to tie some part of themselves to it. Maybe we still have a foot in the idea of a review being the opinion of the person writing it and not letting the game speak for itself. But now that we have video, games have a louder voice than they've ever had before. So we're seeing a procedural generation become a more commonly used game technique in recent days. I know that it's something I've been familiar with for a long time because I play a lot of roguelikes, and those are mostly founded on procedural generation systems. I think it's a good way to approach game design, and I've certainly found a lot of entertainment with it, but I think it's also got some potential pitfalls. And is it something that we can rely on in the future? Is it something that we'll eventually get such a technological handle on that every game would be essentially procedurally generated?
What are some of the pitfalls you say?
Well, the pitfalls are that it's not hand designed, and when you're sort of relying on a random variable to create your levels, it can come out bad, or it can come out unwinnable if it's not programmed correctly. And also you miss the element of artisanship.
But it paves the way for emergent storytelling, which is quite cool. Like, stuff can happen in procedurally generated games that the developer could not have planned for.
That's true, but I mean, I do think that it can hurt narrative in a way, because you can fall into that scenario where you just get a bad seed. And I'm not saying that'll always happen, but there have been a couple of those titles where, yes, they're procedurally generated, but you just wake up and you're like, man, this is a really crappy hand I got dealt, so you need to kind of reset until you get an ideal thing.
Yeah.
Or even worse, people can abuse it and just keep resetting until they have their ideal setting and go from there.
Well, I think you see those games don't really lean as hard on narrative or lean as hard on telling a story. They're much more mechanics focused. And then it's not learning the game, it's learning how to use all the tools that you've been given to be able to conquer a randomly generated scenario. It gives games a lot more legs.
Yeah. Well, name the biggest one out there. It has to be Minecraft, certainly.
I guess so, yeah. I forgot that it did that. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most popular games out there at the moment, and it's in no small part due to its procedural generation. Another one that's coming up that I'm really looking forward to is No Man's Sky.
Yeah, that game looks good.
I'm looking forward to that, but I'm also very hesitant, because it just seems like they're promising a lot.
Yeah, it seems to be way too ambitious. But on the other hand, like, I've seen a couple of dev diaries now, and I saw that they're getting a handle on procedurally generated sound as well, which is sounding pretty interesting. Like, I heard the tests that they made, and it was pretty impressive. I'm thinking if they pull this off, that could be like a whole new era for this kind of tech. If that game turns out to be a success, then I think we're going to see a lot more procedurally generated games, and I think there's going to be a lot more focus on advancing that technology.
I don't mind it as long as it's still set within a certain structure. I know XCOM 2 is going to be having it, but their approach to it is actually something that I'm actually more excited for, because the way they're going to be doing their procedural content is that they're going to have certain tiles, and then within each tile you can have a certain, I guess it can pull from a certain pool and then populate the tile with certain items. So that way when you get these maps, they're hopefully going to be all completely unique, but they're all going to be made of these certain assets. And
that's a good solution for some of the problems.
Yeah, it helps them, I guess, shape the narrative, and then I guess the way of battle a little bit more. So the details of it will be procedural, but the actual overall feel will be consistent. And I think that kind of helps eliminate a lot of those mechanics where you see, you just get a really bad hand dealt. Just random chance can just ruin your gaming experience.
But isn't that stuff programmed in a sort of way, like, if this happens, then that should happen after that? Can't developers sort of prepare for the event that there is going to be a bad seed? Like, it's essentially programming the game so that some unwinnable scenarios will never happen? Because procedurally generated doesn't, of course, mean completely random. It means random within a few set parameters.
Right. The problem is that the tighter you constrain those variables, then the less variety you ultimately get out of it.
Yeah.
Which kind of defeats the whole purpose of procedural generation.
Yeah, you want to let a little bit of chaos kind of rampage through, because then you also get the emergent narrative of a situation that seems unwinnable, but actually is, because a computer went through it and said, okay, there is actually a way to win this, but you have to find it. And so that's really interesting stuff. And if they constrain it too much, then, basically it's going to be the same with a frequency that makes it boring, and maybe they shouldn't use it in the first place.
I know there's an indie title that I played called Cloudberry Kingdom, and it was really cool. I was talking to the developers, and they talked about how their entire game is procedurally generated, where the head developer kind of just built this algorithm that would randomly assign variables to the level. So you have different elevations, you have different traps, you have different difficulty curves. And the coolest thing about it, though, is that it tends to take into account the player's skill level. So if the game recognizes that you're either taking too long to complete a level, or if you're dying at a certain type of obstacle too many times, or there's certain things getting in your way, it'll adjust the difficulty accordingly. So
wow.
Yeah, so it'll set forth, like, I mean, if you look at some of the screenshots, they have some insane levels where, like, it almost looks like a bullet hell style game where there's just so much crap flying at you. And if you're skilled enough where you can dodge that stuff, it'll just keep adding in more and more until you reach that wall where, okay, 798 lasers flying at your face is obviously too much. The game will scale it back down. So it's actually really fun.
That's amazing. It sort of ties into what I said last week, right? About the adaptive difficulty in games.
Yeah.
They took that concept and put it to the next level. That's amazing.
So I mean, if you can see that applied on a bigger scale, like let's say a game like The Witcher 3, if it had procedurally generated, like landscapes and it would adapt to your level, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially good for a game like what's in No Man's Sky, where ideally the planets you visit are going to be completely unique and it'll adjust to you. So I mean, that has a lot of potential.
Yeah, they sort of guarantee that that's going to be the case.
They do. But again, I'm very hesitant to rely on the word potential as a good thing, because everything has potential. I'd rather see it for what it is and make my assumption from there. Because I mean, they could sit there and tell me all day that, our procedural generation has the potential to create unlimited worlds. That's all well and good. But when I pick up the game and I'm finding 999,000 worlds that are just nothing but plains, that's not really going to be fun for me.
Or what are you going to do there? If they don't, what's the game? Some people do like that exploration thing, but that's not necessarily for me.
It's not just that. You could go out and you could map unknown planets, like undiscovered planets, where you can take part in dogfights. You can be a trader. You can basically do like a whole lot of things. I don't know how interesting or how involved all those things are going to be, but I am very interested in seeing if they can make this universe feel engaging and real and interesting. Like Enrique said, if every planet except for a handful are just empty plains and sort of look pretty, that can get really boring after about 10 hours.
Did you read the thing where they made robots to watch over their robots?
I didn't.
No.
They basically, what they did was they coded robots that are watching the robots that are doing the procedural generation to make sure that all the things that they make are within a certain spec.
Okay.
So as the procedural engine is cranking out this giant universe, there's also another observer thing that's watching over it and making sure that all the content it creates fits a certain framework. And then based on whether it does or it doesn't, then they go in and like retune the procedural engine.
Wow. That makes me pretty optimistic.
But that should diminish your fears about whether that there's going to be really uninteresting planets floating around, because they're dialing in the system constantly to make it so that that's not true. My fear is that it'll just be like, what do I do? Because I don't get enough of a charge out of walking around and looking at stuff in a game for it to be worth playing to me.
That's definitely a fear with procedural generation, where when they rely too heavily on it and it just becomes too randomized, you might have a lot of elements thrown together that don't necessarily create the best experience for you as a player.
Yeah. Well, that's a risk that they're obviously willing to take, because I don't think that they would have made this choice if the good outweighs the bad, or if the bad outweighs the good. Sorry.
I don't think it's necessarily a choice about whether or not the good outweighs the bad. I think it's just people have a different outlook on how much a mechanic can attract players. I mean, you saw it with WildStar when it first came out. The developers thought that, hey, making a game that caters exclusively to the hardcore crowd will sell millions because that's what the people want. And they found out, hey, hardcore crowd, not that big after all. So with No Man's Sky, I'm kind of thinking that there is a very real chance that they just kind of thought, hey, procedural generation is awesome, so let's just throw that in there without really having a grasp on how to kind of stick it to a narrative or put it in such a location where it'll encourage player interactivity.
Well, I'm not even sure who their demographic is. Is it people who just want to explore things? Like, I think their biggest selling point or their biggest strength in the stuff that I've seen is the way it looks, because it looks very atmospheric. And the music's really good. It's 65 Days of Static, and they are absolutely fantastic. Plus, the premise is there is something at the center of the universe that is important, and you are supposed to go there at your leisure. You can just put that aside if you want to, but if you want to explore the game further, there is a chance of you being able to do that. So I think that, coupled with the procedural generation, it has a certain undeniable pull on me.
It does, but again, going back to what you were saying, piggybacking off of it, it makes me worried that I can't tell what the demographic is for this game, because suddenly it raises a lot of red flag and questions saying, well, what kind of content are you going to be putting in it, or how are you adapting that content?
Yeah.
Do you even know what kind of content you're going to be producing and for who, or are you just throwing a bunch of things in it?
I think that procedural generation is best when it's used for infinite recreation of content instead of just creation of an infinite amount of content.
Skyrim did that, didn't they? Like, a lot of the quests were procedurally generated.
Yeah, and they actually ended up feeling very repetitive in a way.
Yeah.
Like the stuff that I like that's procedurally generated is like Dungeon of the Endless, which is a kind of a roguelike game, kind of tower defense, kind of dungeon explorer sci-fi kind of thing. But the thing is, like, in all these games, like Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup and Dungeon of the Endless, is you go and you die and then you start over. And then that's where the procedural generation comes in, is so that you can play again and die again and never run out of new levels to explore and go through, versus just, I mean, like you're saying with No Man's Sky, where they just make a huge world, but it's not like they're going to ever have to reset it or recreate it, because once you start going through it, it's always going to be the same. I don't know if that's the right technique to do it with. I mean, or maybe I don't think it's refined enough yet to do that with.
Yeah, see, I definitely agree with Sam, because my enjoyment of the games with procedural content are the ones that let you just replay it and have a fresh experience, like Faster Than Light, Darkest Dungeon, or Endless Sea. These are games that, you have one playthrough, it generates the content, and then when you die, you reload the game, start afresh, and then suddenly it's still the same, basic content, but it's got all the different bells and whistles, and it makes the experience feel fresh. And I prefer that more than, let's say, Minecraft, because I've noticed, like, Minecraft had a big loss in interest for me because I just got tired of that massive landscape every time.
In the same way that I got sort of fed up with the Sunless Sea after a couple of tries, after dying a couple of times, starting over. Because even though that is procedurally generated, in truth, the content just sort of gets jumbled around, so it's only slightly fresher than the time before.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that has the same feel, or the same thing happens with roguelike games, especially the 2D ones. Because after a while, it's not really giving you new random content. It's just sort of shuffling things around, and things are in slightly different places.
Right. Well, the goal of those isn't to give you new content. The goal of those is that you master your toolbox.
Right.
And then it gives you new scenarios to apply your tools to, and you gradually get better at understanding how to apply the mechanics and systems that you've been given to conquer random content. It's not supposed to be brand spanking new, or it's just new configurations and new ways of going about things that might be different.
Yeah, but to me, that's not really interesting for all that long, I think. I think it's interesting in No Man's Sky because of the scale. I'm not entirely sure what it is about procedural generation, because I think the tech on paper is absolutely awesome, and I think that there's a big future ahead for this technology if it's applied well. But so far, it hasn't really enriched my personal experiences, as it were.
I can understand that. For me, it creates some of the best experiences for me completely.
Yeah, that's the feeling I have, that it should be doing the same for me, but it hasn't done that up till now, which is why I'm looking to No Man's Sky, because I sort of believe, based on the very little information I had on that game, I really hope that is that game that is going to open my eyes towards procedural generation and get on that particular bandwagon, as it were.
I do think that if there's a game for it to succeed in, that would be the title, just because of the nature of it. It's space exploration. It's the idea of, exploring an uncharted island, uncharted planet and solar system. So having, planets that can be populated by new creatures every time and new territories, that definitely seems like the game to showcase that.
Yeah.
And it'll apply it in such a way where it won't fall into a lot of the pitfalls we've seen.
I think that what you'll see as games get larger and larger, that eventually it's going to be a common tactic in almost everything.
Yeah.
Because if you can procedurally generate assets, you don't need to spend people time on them.
Yes.
And it's just a matter of sort of harnessing that in comparison with how you tell a narrative story in a procedural game.
Right.
But it's got a lot of potential. Seems cool.
Yep. It's a brave new world, and hopefully procedural generation is going to be at the forefront of that new world, because it seems awesome.
We recently saw that Steam is now going to be issuing refunds. That was pretty big news this week. So basically within 14 days, if you haven't played it for more than 2 hours, you can get your money back. And that's obviously going to have huge repercussions on basically everybody who's not a consumer. We know it's good for us, but the question is, what's the impact that's going to have on the other side of the coin for developers and publishers?
Here are my thoughts on this. Right, I did a bit of research into this, and I thought that Steam would allow refunds because they couldn't really dodge European legislation about the right to withdraw. Like most people, or in the EU, you're entitled to a 14-day withdrawal period, as it were, and that is also on digital goods. So I thought that was because that was the reason why they implemented refunds. So basically, what the article that I read said was, by clicking purchase, you agree that Valve provides you with immediate access to digital content as soon as you complete your purchase, without waiting the 14-day withdrawal period. Therefore, you expressly waive your right to withdraw from this purchase. So we've been consenting to this all these years. So what Valve basically did was they removed that step and just allowed you to get a refund, which makes me think that they are either preparing for something, or they're just being very consumer-minded and trying to set a precedent. Did that make any sense whatsoever?
Yeah, of course. Then,
all right.
And it's especially in the current climate where we see more games than ever coming out sort of buggy and broken.
Yeah.
It's tricky because I normally just wait anyway to make sure that the games aren't like that, but the whole pre-order system has just been savaged by this.
Yeah.
Because now you can pre-order and you're not stuck with the game if it sucks.
Yeah, the barrier for entry is certainly a lot lower now.
So everybody who's charting numbers based on pre-orders to determine sales and figure out what kind of tails a game have, like none of that stuff matters anymore, at least on the PC.
Yeah.
And that's insane, because that's normally their like number one metric.
Yeah, this is really good for us as the end user of this stuff, because now we can just pre-order to our heart's content, and if it turns out to be a shitty release, we can just get our money back, no questions asked. Which is great.
Do you think 2 hours is enough to make a good impression of the game, of whether or not it's something you want to own?
Well, it's certainly enough time to make sure that the game runs well in your machine.
I don't know. I mean, if I see that as a developer, I can just make sure that the first couple hours of a game are fantastic, and then I can just say fuck it to the rest of it.
Oh, that's definitely going to happen, yes. just a fantastically optimized intro, and just after that, it's just shit.
Well, I guess I'm more thinking about in terms of like games that I've played where they start off really strong, but then as I'm playing and I'm 5, 6, 7 hours into the game, I start realizing, man, like they're recycling a lot of content. A lot of the battles are just very repetitious. There's not a lot of diversity. I feel like there's a lot of games that I've regretted purchasing, but it's not until hours after the fact when I've really managed to go through the experience and I think to myself that, man, like, they really kind of didn't do anything. They kind of blew their load at the beginning here.
Well, as long as it's not done on purpose.
Yeah.
You still got some value out of that game. You got 4 or 5 good hours out of it, so it's not great, but it's also not the worst thing in the world.
I guess
if they do it on purpose.
That 2-hour mark on it just kind of almost throws away any good intention they might have had towards, being consumer friendly or this being any good for us.
Because it's not long enough?
I guess. I don't know. Like, I mean, I like the 14-day thing is a great thing, but I don't know. Like the 14-day or 2 hours, whichever comes first, just seems a little disingenuous in a way.
I think it's good for us. Like the 14-day waiting period, or the 2 hours, whichever comes first, in combination with reading reviews and watching videos on the subject. I think that will allow you to make a very informed decision about keeping this game or requesting a refund.
I would expect the refunds to have very little to do with taste and be more geared toward, will it run properly
right
on my system? Will it control properly? I don't think it's designed to be like a 2-hour demo, and then if you don't like it, get your money back. I think that, but they couldn't say, 15, 30 minutes or whatever, because that might not be an accurate judge of how hardware works with that game or anything like that.
I do have to note, though, that Steam's official refund policy remains that unless, and this is a quote, unless required by local law, we do not offer refunds or exchanges on games, DLC or in-game items purchased from our website or through the Steam client, which sort of makes me think that it might be about the European legislation after all.
Right.
Oh, you think it could only apply in Europe, or is it across the board?
I think it works in America as well. But they reserve the right to refuse a refund if your local law does not require them to grant you a 14-day waiting period.
I think it's an old concept brought back to new. I remember a time when you could return a video game you didn't like, but that was a long time ago.
I've never been able to return PC games over here, but that's because usually PC games require a CD key to work, and once you register that key,
it's yours.
It won't register for someone else. Yeah, exactly.
Not only that, but once you register that key, you can return the game and you still own it.
Yes, exactly. You'll still be allowed to play it. Plus, the other guy that bought that game secondhand, he's going to have to use a crack to play the game, making him play that game illegally. It's never been a problem on consoles, by the way, but they still had the all online pass thing for that one, to sort of circumvent that quote-unquote problem.
I just think it's a new concept.
Is it, though?
It is. If you're playing it from a taste mindset, I guess it's a demo. Right? But maybe that's not what they intend it to be. But yes, demos have always existed.
Well, it is for all intents and purposes. I think that this is the first step to treating digital goods in the same manner as physical goods. Just, if something's broke, if you buy something, you go home, you unpack it, turns out to be broken, you can go right back to the store and get your money back. This will allow you to do the exact same thing for digital goods.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the same boat as Sam when he mentioned that this is definitely probably more in mind with looking at the technical compatibility of a game to see whether or not it works in your system. And in that case, 2 hours is more than enough time for me to load it up and say, okay, this runs great, or hey, like I can't get a damn thing to work here. Yeah. So I definitely don't think taste it was even in consideration when it came to this. Even though they say you can post a return and request a refund for whatever reason, I definitely think that might have been the motivation behind it.
Right, but it's morphed into that. Like, it will become taste. That's what's interesting. Whether they intended it to or not, and whether it should be or not, it will become a taste thing. Now every game has a demo, basically.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's what I was, hinting towards. That is 2 hours enough for you to kind of make that,
make that judgment or assessment?
Yeah, I guess, is that this 2 hours enough for you to have a complete assessment and say, you know what? Like, this is not a game that I want to own. And it's weird because my Steam library is filled with games that I don't play because I didn't enjoy them. But it's always been like, I buy the game, I play it for a few hours, I decide I don't enjoy it, and I install it, and I don't even think twice about it.
Well, what you really need to assess the entire game, I mean, the 2 hours is enough for you to spark your interest. 2 hours is enough for you to say, right, yeah, this interested me, and I would like to know what the rest of the game is like. Which is exactly what a demo does.
Yeah, definitely. And it's unprecedented, I think, that almost every game is going to have a demo. That's going to change basically everything. It's insane, almost.
Yeah.
You think they'll put a limit to that, though? Because doesn't Steam already have that, that limit that if you get refunded for something, you're not allowed to purchase for the next few hours or the next few days?
Oh, that's a good question.
It is no questions asked, but if you do it too often, I think they'll put a lock on your account for a certain amount of time, which is fair enough.
Sense. Yeah.
But what I'm wondering is this: what's going to happen to games that you got from a Humble Bundle, for instance, or from a gift? What's going to happen with those games if you decide to refund that?
Well, I think you have to have proof of purchase on your account. So, like, for the gifting, that's not even a issue, a question, because obviously, if you didn't buy the game and there's no transaction history, then
right. But Humble Bundle does have that.
It does, but doesn't the Humble Bundle just give you the Steam keys and then you just redeem them?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't show up on your account as being bought through the Steam marketplace, and therefore not eligible for
the refund
refund.
policy is specifically towards things bought through the Steam client or from the Steam shop.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I can register any CD key I want on Steam, but unless I actually bought it directly through them, it's not going to affect the refund policy.
Wow, that actually lets them corner the market a little bit more, doesn't it? And like,
it does in a way. Yeah,
if you
you're
want
right.
access to a refund, you need to be buying it through them. But I don't see myself using it that much, really.
You think it'll change the way we I guess purchase games now, or the way we walk into it? Because I know beforehand, whenever I buy games on Steam, even on sale, I tend to do a little bit of research on it. Even if the game is like $2.99, I'll look around on the forums. I'll see what the community's saying. I'll see if it's a game that I want to own, even for $2.99. Do you think that now that we have that, I guess this refund, people are kind of throw caution to the wind?
It's going to be a safety net for impulse buys. That much is certain.
I kind of like that. If it works that way and it draws people sort of maybe away from looking at reviews and community opinions and just buying a game to play it, like maybe people will explore more of the catalog that might not be as well documented.
No, could be.
And be more willing to take a risk on some very small games with only like 3 or 4 downloads that might be really good. So maybe everybody gets more, or maybe some of the smaller games get more exposure out of it too. That'd be good.
That could be, yeah. Because there's virtually no risk involved in getting it.
I don't know if you covered this already, but 'cause I might not have heard, but does this extend to mods as well?
Oh, I don't know. Well, there's no paid
Like
mods right now, right?
Well,
hypothetically?
Yeah, hypothetically, because I remember Bethesda did say that they still thought the paid mod system was a good idea and they do want to work on it. So with Fallout 4 coming out, there's the very real concern that they might actually implement paid mods on there and through the Steam Workshop. Is that something those refunds would cover?
I don't know.
In theory, I guess.
Yeah, you think so, huh?
And especially with mods where everything can conflict with each other and you can break everything by installing the wrong mods. It makes sense to put it there. I hope they don't do anything like that at all. But if they did put the paid mods in, then this would be a good thing to apply to them.
I don't know, because it's kind of interesting because it makes you think if maybe that there's a change in the landscape coming soon and Valve is just kind of bracing for it.
It could be. It definitely could be. I mean, everything's a little weird with video games right now, so who knows?
One of the positive things about this could be that people will no longer feel the need to defend their purchase to other people. Like, you already don't really have... You shouldn't already have the need to do that anyway. But people still do it. If a game turns out to be bad, people sort of go into denial and start to argue, no, it's a great game, I fucking love it. 3 months after, they come out and say, like, maybe it's not that good.
I do like this, though, because I guess especially with early access and, the big issues that we've been having with it lately where more and more games are coming out half-finished or just broken, or the developers just aren't putting forth any effort to it. I do like the idea that I can try a game on early access saying, hey, this looks awesome, and then play it for a bit and realize, man, this is broken as hell. I don't want anything to do with this. And I do like what Chris mentioned about how this kind of has implications in terms of the digital landscape and how we're seeing that digital goods can now be more closely treated as physical goods, where I do have some kind of ownership on it and I am allowed to be somehow reimbursed if I'm unhappy with my experience.
Yeah, it makes digital stuff a little more tangible.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, nothing about it from my side as a consumer seems bad at all. And especially if I can just try to play some random things that I never would have tried before. And I wish they would come out and say sort of how they intended it to be used. Like whether they made it so that you could test the hardware and then 2 hours gives you time to tweak and maybe mess around with some files, make sure it doesn't work, or whether it's intended to be a demo for every game ever.
I kind of feel bad for some of the indie titles that are a lot shorter. Because, there's been a couple titles that I've played that you can technically beat within an hour. And they're made to be that way because they're made for you to do constant replays and, harder difficulty or challenge yourself, whatever. But with the 2 hour limit, I wonder if people might abuse it that way, where they'll just get on, play the game. If they can beat it under 2 hours, they're like, all right, money back.
That's probably going to happen.
Yeah, it's probably going to happen a lot.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, actually.
Or how does that, affect people that, buy a game and then they start hacking online and they get banned?
Yeah, done. Oh, can they refund? Oh my God, I don't know.
Yeah, if I'm banned within 2 hours, before 2 hours before my purchase, then I'm like, you know what? Fuck you guys, I want my money back.
Yeah, maybe that should be a little clause in the end user agreement.
Oh, that would be the darkest timeline. Because they would just create new accounts and then get on and get banned and then create a new account, like getting their money back every single time.
Who would take that amount? Who would put in that amount of effort? Let's be honest.
You'd be surprised what people do when they're bored.
Yeah,
I'm not saying, obviously, to cheat at a game takes a little bit more, I guess, forethought than just buying a game and then doing it on impulse. But let's say it's a game you've already owned for a while, and then you decide, you know what, let me fuck around on a hack real quick.
Yeah, but you'll get your account banned if you do it too often. Like Valve will probably ban your main account, which means that all the games in there lost.
You think? I mean, I could just make a new Steam account for a bit, buy that game on that one, fuck around, get banned, and then hey, no harm done, get my money back.
Trolls will be trolls, I guess. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can't really plan for the worst kind of assholes and something like this.
I'm aware I'm kind of like painting the darkest timeline right now, but
there's going to be something that makes it bad that we hadn't even thought about before, and somebody's going to find a way to ruin it for everybody. That's inevitable.
Yeah, if this is a way for somebody to abuse it, they will.
And that concludes episode 7 of the Select Characters podcast. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode as much as we enjoyed making it. And as always, we would like to invite you to join the discussion over at reddit.com/r/true gaming. If you want to get into contact with us, or if you want to see if the podcast is hosted on your favorite platform, you can check out the links in the description, and please consider subscribing to us. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.